Super duper, it's
Are we
all
live now?
happening.
Are we live? Can you see us?
Are we live? Microdosing. Here we be.
Yeah. I think we're.
It's all happening.
I'm gonna look on my other
Microdosing with
computer.
Max and Stacy. According to Arbor, Michigan is moving to legalize psilocybin mushrooms, apparently, and peyote. That's what I just saw that online. So there's another wave of decriminalization for recreational drugs going on, I guess, in America. That's interesting.
Hey, well, you know what? We are definitely live. I feel so happy. I didn't know for sure that I would get this to work again because remember last week I told you I had this little stream deck and I would be able to control it from here. Well, I forgot, like this whole last week, I might have been on this peyote. And the fact is, I forgot to test this and figure out how to work it out. So I'm, controlling from mind control here. You just have to take enough peyote and go, "Huh."
I'm wearing my lei.
You got laid?
Well, yeah, because it's all about love. Love with the Bitcoin logo. It's all about love.
Right. How does everybody feel about the microdosing orange pill? You're looking at that. By the way, lockdowns are beginning everywhere around the world. And so you may hear the doorbell ring because I did order a case of wine to get through the next month or two. And they ask for, an adult's signature. I have to go out and show them my identification.
No, I thought it's because it's an oversized package and they can't get it through the door frame. So they have to airlift it through the loft window.
No. They ask for, usually they say, they keep on sending me text messages. You have to show your ID when they show up. And then the FedEx man arrives. And you know what happens? He goes like this. He looks at me and goes, yeah, you don't need to show me your ID.
Yeah, exactly. It's we're all friends here, aren't we? Under lockdown. It's one big commune. We're on the kibbutz of COVID, the COVID kibbutz.
I usually do this.
Nice. Yeah, everyone knows that. That's how you say thank you.
That's right. And you know what? I'm down to my last 2 rolls of toilet paper.
Oh, dear.
So apparently they're already out of toilet paper in Scotland. So if anybody from Scotland is watching this, and we know that there are something like 200 different nationalities in the Orange Pill podcast group over at Telegram, I'll sell you these for 1 Bitcoin. Okay?
Both or 1 piece each?
Both.
Oh,
I'm generous because just for Scottish people, because our people are Scottish. So the fact is, I'll sell this to you for 1 Bitcoin. If you're English, then it's going to be 2 Bitcoin each. Okay?
Yep, that's right. There's a lot of interregional stuff heating up. But since we're married, we don't really need toilet paper. We just hose each other down.
That's gross.
You just go out in the back and get the hose out.
That's one of the grossest things I've ever heard you say. We were discussing this earlier, though. Like, we do have a lot of deer walking around outside, and we were sitting out in the sun, one of the last moments of sun before winter comes. And just 2 days ago, and sitting outside, and a deer and her fawn walked around the corner, and then she just stopped and stared at us right a few feet away.
Yeah, they're big on staring, the deers.
You got so uncomfortable.
Eventually, you do get uncomfortable when there's a deer just staring at you, not moving, and wondering, is this like the CIA has rigged up this deer somehow to come spy on me? Is this a deer drone or something? Was it, what's going on? It's disquieting.
So somebody wishes Max Keiser was my dad.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Hello, Miguel Angel Montoya from Bogota. Everybody's ready for us. Hey, you know what? I look at there and I look, you know what? I lightened my hair this week because, after 6 months of lockdown, I decided I need to take care of myself. I've got to be anti-fragile. I can't need the hairdresser. And I tested a little bit. I put a little bit of these highlights. It's easy to just do your roots, do a little bit of one single process, they call it in the female world. And I did a single process a few times over the past 6 months. In fact, you've helped me do that before. But what I needed was some highlights. So I got this bleach and I put like a few stripes through. And, they say do it from 20 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on how light you want it to go. So I did it for like 15 minutes, just a few of them. And it looked okay. And it didn't look like a disaster. And, I only did it for 15 minutes. And then I was like, oh, it should be lighter. I want it lighter. So I put some more in, like more all over, because I thought like the first time didn't end in disaster. So I put some more in, and I went for 35 minutes, and like my hair turned like this color, orange, like it was bright orange and yellow.
Yeah,
I went
yeah.
in the kitchen and sat with Max, and he was like, hey, your hair looks great.
Right. Well, to the person out there who wants me as their dad, anyone who's looking for fatherly advice, I have only one life lesson. And once you understand this, you're prepared for adulthood. And that is the following: men think with their dicks, women think with their hair. Okay? Once you understand that, it all gets a lot easier.
Well, then I had to do a thing. I had to go on Google and YouTube and find out what to do. And you know what? Like, YouTube is the best for figuring out how to save yourself from disasters, DIY disasters, because I got some, some toner. I sorted that out with some toner. And even then I was afraid that it looked like when it was wet with this toner in it, like I was creating yet another disaster. I thought I was compounding my disaster. Instead, it turned out okay. And I might do it again, but like get a little bit more of the yellow
I
or
like
orange.
it. It's kind of like Farrah Fawcett, one of my teenage crushes. It's got that wavy Farrah Fawcett look about it. And she had that great poster. She's wearing like an orange, could have been an orange pillar, kind of an orange swimsuit. Eventually she did go insane, and that's sad. But at that time, I remember she had this incredibly best-selling poster, and every teenager was madly in love with
Teenage boy.
teenage boy was madly in love with Farrah Fawcett.
I had Sean Cassidy on my wall.
Sean Cassidy, okay.
Yeah. And that was kind of the same wavy hair.
Oh, same hair. They probably had the same hairstylist in Santa Monica Boulevard or somewhere.
Right. Let's see what else. Madge Weinstein, I learned from looking at her Twitter handle, Bloated Lesbian. I learned that there's a thing called drag kings. It's not just drag queens. Yeah, I didn't even know this. So I thought that was interesting. I kind of feel like I want to try it out and just see what it's like to act like a dude on stage.
Oh, drag kings. Oh, right. I guess. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, to be a drag king. I would want, I've always wanted to see what it feels like to be Florida man. Like, I would be Florida man. I want like a truck with truck nuts. I want to see what it's like to be like that guy who doesn't mind driving around like that.
Well, like Yves Saint Laurent, right? He's kind of the king of the drag kings, right? Because he invented the suit for women back in the late 60s, I believe. He introduced the women's tuxedo, which was a men's wear and worn by women. So I guess he would be the progenitor of drag kings. Now we've got, as you point out, it's become more of a dyke fest where the drag kings.
I mean, what are you from the 70s? You can't say that anymore.
I can't say that word?
Unless you're a lesbian. Like, Madge can say dyke. You can't say dyke.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I take it back then.
Just because you have a 70s lesbian.
I had a whole story when I went to this lesbian bar in Atlanta. I thought that would be amusing, but I guess I can't tell it. Also, I have many amusing stories about the late 1970s, as I've said before.
You see, Madge is there in the chat room saying you're canceled now.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God.
So what happened with this drag queen lesbian bar?
I'm saying I used to be at Trudy Heller's. As people know, I was a go-go dancer at Trudy Heller's.
No, tell people
who are just... It was a famous
just
lesbian bar.
Well, people are microdosing on this. So tell them about Trudy Heller's, what Trudy Heller's was, and what you were doing there, how old you were, and what you actually did about bringing your butt cheeks out in public.
Right. So, Trudy Heller's was very famous lesbian bar in Greenwich Village, 6th Avenue and 9th Street. She was a kind of a celebrity lesbian at the time. They had a lot of acts came through that club. The Supremes, I think, had their New York City debut at Trudy Heller's. So by the late 70s, the scene was kind of quieting down a bit. But I was in New York City. I got a job as a bartender there. And also, I ran a comedy night on Tuesday nights called Max Keiser's Mixed Nuts.
Oh my God, I
And
never knew that. That's
yeah,
gross.
yeah. And then on other nights, I was bartending. And then, okay, one thing leads to another. And I'm on the bar, go go dancing, half naked, but that was the late 70s. So, but I have the legs for it. That's what I'm trying to say. Like a lot of these women who are parading around showing off their legs. I mean, it's nowhere near as nice as my legs. I've got some of the nicest legs in
You do.
Bitcoin. I
You
might have
do.
the nicest legs in Bitcoin.
Well, that's the problem that a lot of women have. Like, say, who's that woman? J.K. Rowling, with all these trans women taking over everything. Is men, they were born male, so they have better legs. Like they have thinner, nicer legs with no cellulite, however you pronounce that word. But so they have like nice legs. You have nice, thin,
That
straight
comes
legs.
from playing hockey also. So hockey, your butt cheeks get very, very tight. It's like buns of steel, as Jane Fonda might say. Hanoi Jane, she's in the news again. And it is what it is. And what can I say? I mean, I'm still rocking my legs, still rocking it, still looking great. Wearing my yoga pants all day. It's fantastic.
Well, somebody's asking, like, why would a male go-go dancer perform at a lesbian bar? And of course, it's like objectification, isn't it? But that's the thing, is like when we try to create this equality of the sexes, especially back then, it's kind of different now. But back then, it was like, women are in the, go-go dancers and in the sex industry and stuff like that. But men are like, bring it on, I'll do it. Like,
Yeah, flesh is flesh. you know, it's like we're at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like bring it on. Who cares? You're up there. Maybe I just jumped up there because I wanted to. I mean, I've known for doing this at other places as well, jumping on the bar and getting half naked and dancing. That was kind of my story during the 1980s.
So I think I remember reading about Trudy Heller's. You can find some stuff online. Is like it was a very famous lesbian bar, and it was somebody like Andy Warhol or some. I mean, I can't imagine him doing go-go dancing, but there was you had the pole bar, the pole dancing bar, right, along the bar. So there were some very famous people that got up there and danced.
Well, of course, this was the height of the disco era. So
Yeah.
you had Studio 54 on 54th Street was, the mecca of disco life. And then there were 10 or 15 other big major discos. And, New York was absolutely feral at that time. And, I mean, for you go from 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, Trudy Heller's, you'd go to down into the village, the Mud Club or Studio 54 or Save the Robots was one of my favorite places. Then you go to an after hours bar, the Red Door after hours bar. You stumble out of there around 9 or 10 a.m. and you start it all over again. So this would just go on like this for weeks and months.
That was before Giuliani kicked out the mafia. The mafia ran a lot of those, the fish market, right? The bar down there. They had a special dispensation to open the bars at their pubs at
right.
Like 5 a.m.
If you find yourself at 5 a.m. and, looking for a party scene and, you can't find one, you can always go down to the Fulton Street Fish Market, which opens up at 5 a.m. at that time when the fish that comes in, the trucks come in. And it's a wild scene because all of these truckers are there with these huge hooks that you use to take the boxes of fish off the truck. So they're at the bar and they're wearing these big hooks. And invariably a fight breaks out, of course. And, to see the damage that some of these hooks can do to a human face is impressive. Fortunately, I escaped that. I've seen many, many fights and brawls down in the Fulton Street Fish Market at 5, 6 a.m. It gets gnarly.
That was me waving to Corey Clipston. Hello. Like, we have all sorts of people coming into the group. This is the Orange Pill podcast. This is a microdose of it. You're microdosing orange pill. We're not doing like the super, super deep dive that we do in the Sunday show, where we like explore our inner brains and, consciousness and try to figure out what we're thinking. But here we're talking about some of the mundane, ordinary things about life that leads us to those bigger
Yeah,
thoughts.
the Sunday orange pill show is like the hangover.
That's right.
We
Like,
were microdosing, and then we have that hangover show. We try to eat a lot of sausage and eggs and get through it.
yeah, yeah. I have some stories I'll tell perhaps later in lockdown about this sort of thing. But I feel like it's too early in the second wave of lockdown to be totally honest with some of the stories of the past. I guess two of the big stories in the past week have been this FinCEN thing. And I think we're going to go a little bit deeper into that on the Sunday show because we're also going to be talking to Ala Kanani this week, Bitcoin lady on Twitter, and she's in Botswana. And I'm really interested in that whole financial censorship story and how, some of these most amazing people you meet from places like Africa and the entire continent is basically censored, right? They can't get financial services and banking services and participate in the global economy. Even just something as simple as say this, this whole wave of the new, I know it's so much like these DeFi and then all that potatoes and hot dog stuff. But then now we have these NFTs, like the digital art and stuff like that. But say even like you're trying to sell your digital art for US dollars or any currency, right? And just the difference between being somebody like Ala Kanani who lives in Botswana and somebody who lives in Scotland or Hong Kong or anywhere, like the access to PayPal or payment systems is so like they have such an unfair they have a disadvantage there in Africa that they can't compete in the same way. So I feel like that it's a really underexplored story in this space. This is where Bitcoin started, right? As an anti-censorship.
Well, I totally agree with that. And we've been talking a lot about Nigeria lately because 30% of the population is totally fluent in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has already jumped to hyper Bitcoinization or using Bitcoin as a unit of account. So it's moved from store of value, medium of exchange, to unit of account already in Nigeria. It makes sense because they don't have a lot of the installed rails of payments, as you just pointed out. So what happens is a country like Nigeria will just leapfrog and go into Bitcoin world, just like China leapfrogged in a lot of ways and went right into mobile. They didn't want to build the copper wires that were the phone system for so many years. And now Nigeria has leapfrogged into the 21st century, the Bitcoin century, with payments on their phones and using Bitcoin as a unit of account. And so I've said, and I think that Nigeria could be the most important country for Bitcoin in the world right now. They're not struggling with how to market it. What's the adoption? How do we get people using it? Like they're so far beyond that.
Yeah, so we're going to go a little bit more into that, but also, the fact is this whole FinCEN story, on the surface, of course, we've been on Keiser Report for 11 years now have been talking about all these frauds and money laundering and all that sort of stuff the banks do. And exactly, Max says this all the time. As soon as banks get caught doing something wrong, somebody has to be punished because now FinCEN has been humiliated. So they've got to arrest somebody and throw some people in jail. And it's not going to be Jamie Dimon. It's not going to be any heads of Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Warren Buffett or anybody from Deutsche Bank or HSBC. It's going to be some ordinary Joe Bag of Donuts who, sent $12,000 and it should have been reported as 13. It'll be something so stupid and mundane. And of course, all the mainstream media will report it like, we've got these guys, these bad guys, like they laundered $50,000. It's great. And you're like, what about the dude who laundered $1 trillion? It won't be that guy.
It's just like, tunneling from Mexico to the US and transporting drugs. The DEA will find the tunnel and they'll make a big fuss about it. But there's hundreds of other tunnels. And same thing with Wall Street. FinCEN or whomever can come in and say, hey, we're shutting down this money laundering. We're shutting down this terrorist financing. But there's 100 other ways that they're doing it. And eventually those ways will be discovered. But Wall Street will move on to a dozen new ways. And this is a whack-a-mole. The Wall Street's always coming up with new ways to launder money and fund terrorism. It's been like that really hardcore for 40 years since Reagan deregulated the markets. It's been growing exponentially every single year. And it's not going to stop anytime soon. And Bitcoin, of course, is the counter fraudulent activity that is named as a link to terrorist funding. They talk about Bitcoin, and yet 99% of terrorist funding and money laundering is with HSBC, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Warren Buffett. I mean, that's who's doing it. The FinCEN report is the smoking gun. And guess what? It's one of 30 smoking guns, and no one ever does anything. If you have an ability to print money and you control the money printer, there's no way you're going to face justice.
Well, again, I just feel like it's a whole Karen move from the media, because as soon as they report this stuff, it's the ordinary person that ends up paying. So, but we were talking about competition, and the fact that, access to the payment rails, of course, is a good way to exclude competition and pretend you're not, like, you're just out competing them. Like, it's not our fault that nobody in Nigeria can access the payments rail. Like, that's why we the fact that we out compete them is nothing to do with the fact that we cut them off from the payments rail. So, however, of course, China has leapfrogged us. And this is one of the big themes that we've been talking about with de-dollarization, deglobalization, and the Thucydides trap is the big picture story that we've been covering for the past, 10 years, really, but especially in the past 5 years. Once China basically landed, went into outer space first. So once China revealed to the world that two things, that they were ahead of us in high tech, they could outcompete us there. They kicked our ass, frankly, on 5G technology. They delivered faster and more efficiently and cheaper. They also they outcompeted us on one other thing. I forgot it now. But 5G technology, they're ahead. And same with then TikTok outcompeted. We've been happy with our system where, we could just send money and food stamps and some, free money to all the plebs that used to work. And now they don't manufacture anymore. But we've always had our State Department pivoted to just securing IP rights, like intellectual property, and making sure that Silicon Valley did well. We had 30, 40 billionaires there, and Jeff Bezos and these sort of guys. Like, that was all the intellectual property. So the fact that this is also a high-tech AI story is that TikTok, they can't figure out, like, it's kicked ass, and it has something to do with artificial intelligence and the way that you view the videos that you're looking at, and that signals they feed you what you want next. And it obviously causes hyper consumption of the content being delivered on TikTok, because I haven't even gone there. So I'm glad they don't know how to make me addicted to it. But so we have this story in this past week, or, it's been building over the past few weeks of just like smash and grab, taking their content. When the Soviets sent a man to outer space first, was it Yuri Gagarin? And then what did we do? Like, we outcompeted them. We created the space program, we created NASA, and we got a man on the moon first before they could. So, we outcompeted them because we saw that they were ahead of us. Well, you would think we could do the same thing here. Like, okay, wait, China's kicking our ass in 5G and AI. Well, let's do something about it. Let's build some better products. Instead, they're like, just, okay, we're tired of pretending we're not an empire. Just give it to us.
Yeah, it's puzzling in a couple of different ways. So one thing that puzzles me is that Twitter invented TikTok essentially with Periscope. And that was running for a while, and it was wildly successful, and people were vining. And wasn't there Vine? Vine was also an American TikTok-like invention. And that's right. That's the Vine. Vine, I think, was brought out by the Twitter company. And
I think they bought it. It used to be an independent company, and Twitter bought it.
Okay.
And then destroyed it.
They abandoned it.
Yeah.
Right. And people are like, geez, that doesn't make any sense because it was so cool. Then TikTok comes out and it's like, oh, look, China's doing a Vine. Now it's huge. So that's puzzle number one. Like, why did Twitter abandon this? And then the puzzle number two is, it's an evolving story. And as of the last 10 minutes, what I read was that Beijing is not going to sell TikTok or
Yeah,
get rid of
no.
TikTok. And okay, right. So my point from the very beginning of this was Beijing's never going to get rid of TikTok. Why? What? I don't understand how the U.S., how Trump, how anyone can simply tell China, give us TikTok, give us that, right? For that makes no sense to me. Like, I guess the problem is, and what's troubling, is that it shows total naivete on the part of our political leadership here in America about how this 21st century economy is evolving
Mm.
away from the US and away from the dollar. I would have thought they would have understood this in Washington by now. Apparently, they're slow learners.
Well, the fact is that we could just compete, but we're not going to compete. But it also suggests to me, with this financial surveillance state and surveillance state, they go hand in hand. The political surveillance state is that, because the elite just project. They tell you always what they're actually doing. Like their whole obsession with election interference is obviously projection, right? Like we interfere in every single election in the world. So when that's the classic way to, as a con man, right? You go, like, you accuse somebody else of doing what you did. And you're like, wait, you're the one that's doing this, buddy. Stop accusing me. You're the one, you lunatic. And so, like, the fact that they're so obsessed with these backdoors and Huawei and TikTok, then you think, well, obviously the fact that they have no problem with Vine or Twitter or Periscope or YouTube. I mean, okay, what are they watching? They're watching everything. This is live stream, right? So, okay, the NSA is also watching it. So what, right? But certainly, like, with any of your DMs or data or anything like that, like, they keep on telling you, the Chinese are collecting your data. And it's like, oh, shit. Are you collecting my data from Facebook and YouTube? You are, right? Well, you could put me in jail for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Look at Ross Ulbricht, right? He's in jail for 120 years. What can the Chinese do to me? Well, not really that much, unless I maybe go to Hong Kong or Beijing. Okay, then they might, send me to some of their gulags. But at the moment, like, there's not much they could do to me. So, like, it's just weird that the mainstream media covers this and they never provide that context. Like, they'll like, Rachel Maddow will do her bug eyes about the Chinese state collecting your data from TikTok. And it's like, well, I always want to hear the context. It's like, so if TikTok's collecting your data, are US social media sites collecting data as well? Okay. So, just put it into context of what's actually happening, and then make your own informed decision. Like, I don't want anybody collecting any of my data, like, because they all get hacked and it all gets released. Look at Equifax. Like, I was on that list, and now I can't, like, everything is shut down. It's all locked down. So, like, I can't even open a freaking new bank account, like, because unless I have to go through the whole process of unlocking it. So that's because some asshole company, a private company, leaked my data. So, I'd rather have nobody collect it.
Right. The other thing about TikTok, I guess, is an interesting part of the story is that it's being claimed that the technology uses artificial intelligence to attack, for lack of a better word, the user's subconscious, right? That
Yes.
they're manipulating behavior through subliminal or through sophisticated subconscious rigging technology driven by artificial intelligence. So, two things. Number one, that's, I'm sure, completely true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's used by all social media in a lot of ways. I know when I designed the Hollywood Stock Exchange, for example, back in 1996, this was an issue going back then. How were we influencing people's behavior and their attitude toward movies using this platform? And so it's just gotten more sophisticated ever since then. And the second thing is that the upshot of this is that we have to start thinking about defending ourselves against this. And how do we do that? And that opens up a whole interesting discussion.
That's right. How is everybody out there? Are you able to hear us and see us okay?
Yeah, I feel good.
You feel good?
Yeah.
You look relaxed.
I'm relaxed. I got my lei on. If you're just joining us, I'm wearing this lei I wore at Charlie Shrem's wedding.
That's right. And I was I presided over Charlie Shrem's wedding to Courtney. I married them. I joined their hands
You got
in
your
marriage.
license as a pastor?
Yeah, like from Universal Life Church. I also got like a badge to put in my car if I get special parking privileges at places like hospitals. So if you're ever on your deathbed, maybe you might get COVID in this next round and you're obese and you might be on the deathbed. And if you want me to come, like, say some sort of Bitcoin prayer to you.
Administer the last rites.
Yeah.
To any Bitcoiner who's dying from COVID, Stacy's a licensed pastor and has a parking permit at the hospital. So she could come and park and be in your room, deliver last rites within 20 minutes.
And I'll figure out how much to charge. Maybe 2 rolls of toilet paper that I could then send to the people in Scotland.
Remind me of that toilet paper. Hand me one of those toilet papers. We're coming up on Halloween.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to destroy this valuable toilet paper, but if you need a costume, at the last minute, you can use a toilet paper, wrap it around yourself, and go as the mummy. I did that 3 years in a row. And one year it started raining, and it didn't work out as well. But it's a cheap costume. Yeah,
well, back in our day, we're so old that you didn't get shot dead by police if you toilet papered a house. Like that was like the fun thing to do.
What is that?
What?
Toilet papering a house?
Didn't you do that during Halloween? I thought that's why you brought it up.
What is it?
You just wrap toilet paper around a house. Like, you go out into the suburbs and you wrap some toilet paper around a house.
No,
it's a treat. It's a trick.
Trick or treat. That's the trick. What was your favorite candy when you were out there trick or treating?
Reese's peanut butter cups.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, that's those were the days of trick or treating. We don't get trick or treaters ever here, like anymore.
Not anymore. Not since the children of the corn arrived with the deer and started stalking us. We've got traps and various dynamite.
No, I think everybody's like, parents became paranoid. Like we used to just go out, our parents would just send us out.
Yeah. Like in the morning, you'd get on your bike.
Yeah.
Your mom would say, okay, come back for dinner. Like 7 hours later.
Yeah.
No phones, nothing. You don't know where they are. You come back, you're bloody, it's all messed up. Clothes are ripped. You're riding through the forest at 90 miles an hour. And, you got bit by spiders and your mom's like, oh, yeah, how was your day? Fine. Well, sit down for dinner. And that was that.
Well, my mom would just drop us off in Waterford, Connecticut, which is like, because we lived out in like remote countryside. So she would drop us off in this. It wasn't like exactly posh sort of suburb. It was pretty dodgy. And she would just drop us off and then come pick us up like 3 or 4 hours later. And one year, my little sister, and she was only like 8 or 9, she got robbed by this like teenage boy who stole her bag of candy. And my sister was like this scrawny little deranged child. And she just like, if you think I jump into fights all the time, she would just like dive into it. She's like, chase this guy and punch him. And he started crying like this. He was like, she was like 8 or 9 and he was like 14 or 15. And she punched him, you fat fuck.
Oh, my God.
And she took the candy back and he ran off crying. But, we told the story to my mom. And she's like, oh, that's cool.
That's nice.
Those are the days. She would be arrested now for like child abuse.
Photos of the 70s, too. Like a bunch of kids playing. You don't see a single brand.
No. And none of my photos from school
Right.
pictures.
Just no brand, no brands anywhere really. It's just no brands. Schools were public schools, were that just public libraries and public spaces, and none of that corporate ersatz can of helium pumped into your conscious 24/7 to get you to buy shit.
No, and speaking of that, somebody mentions that take vitamin D for this pandemic, and we have been taking vitamin D, and you're loath to even say anything on YouTube because YouTube deletes anybody and bans them if they mention COVID. So, and they send you to CDC or WHO, which of course have been so derelict with their very confusing information. And this week we saw the U.S. CDC, the Center for Disease Control, like finally they published that aerosols cause the spread of COVID. And that was so obvious from like the early days when the Chinese were obviously acting like it was spread through aerosols. And it is, right? And then now the CDC came out and said like, oh no, we accidentally published that. It's like, okay, stop gaslighting us, okay? You guys are constantly like all of our elite institutions just gaslight us.
You know, what was just as predictable as the second wave of COVID was the first wave of COVID. You know, going back to January, it was obvious if you looked at the Chinese people fainting in the streets that there was a major epidemic going on.
Yeah.
And so people decided to downplay what was happening. So you had a spike in COVID. All right, that was phase one. Then lockdown came, cases diminish, and of course, everyone got tired of lockdown, so they went outside again, and now it's spiked again, phase two, which is completely predictable. Exact same thing happened in 1918 during the last major pandemic. And so it was just very predictable. I mean, it's just humans just predictably do things very predictably.
One thing I'll say compared to Asia and Europe that the US does uniquely, and it's often considered like quite cruel about America, is that all our old people live in old folks' homes and assisted living facilities. Partly it's because something like 86% of them are on Medicaid. So, you know, the taxpayer pays for your housing essentially. But it does enable us to avoid a second wave because if you remove anybody over 70, the death rate is a little bit higher than the flu, but not that much. Over 70 is like way worse than the flu, right? So if we could, they're isolated, right? We could triage and like cut them off from the spread of the virus easily. Whereas in Europe or Asia, like if you live in Paris, like all you see are like all these old ladies walking around. They're so independent. They live on their own. They're not tucked away in an old folks home somewhere until their very last few days or weeks of life. Whereas here, like a lot of people are in the old folks home, so you could isolate them. But on the other hand, as well, is like, you know, the U.S. clearly, and we're seeing that now, can just print money, like just hundreds of billions and billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars that we've printed, and just send it to everybody. We have the highest rate of savings rate and wealth in U.S. history right now, like in the middle of a pandemic where all economic activity is shut down, right? And yet we're like everybody is feeling wealthy because they are flush with cash. We've deposited huge amounts of money. Now, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin today was saying that we're going to have another PPP. Like half of the people took it fraudulently, like, right? Like they don't need it. How many billionaires do we know in the whole, crypto space who printed their money with ICOs and then got like $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million? Who's the guy from Consensus? He got like between $5 and $10 million. Joe Lubin, and he's like a multi-billionaire based on the printed Ethereum scam. So you're like, okay, now another round's coming, and that means if they're going to hand these millions of dollars to connected people who have a good relationship with JP Morgan or Bank of America, well, then they're going to send another $600, maybe $800 for the ordinary people. But what I'm saying is I think we might have a situation where the U.S. has to do that for Europe, that they start sending money like to Europe, to British people.
Oh, okay.
Because the Brits can't print money, right? That would cause...
This would be like a Dunkirk of money.
Yeah, it'll be something like that. Like we already do swaps, right, with the other central banks. But I think it's just going to be like they'll do enhanced unemployment benefits to British people first. I think, because Trump and Boris Johnson, they're both New York schmucks, So I think they're going to, like, with the big, well, I should talk. Like I was going to say with the big orange hair. But, when I lightened my hair, it's a little bit like Trump, Boris-like. But, the fact is, I think that's my prediction. That's like my wild prediction for the next 6 months, 9 months. We might send money to our friends, our allies in the UK.
Well, that is a bold prediction. That's wild. I had never thought of that. I gotta wrap my mind around that. That's crazy.
The elites went too far and have made a lot of things lame and pathetic, said in the voice of Rick Mail.
Oh, Rick Mail. We good friend of Rick Mail. Great guy, great comedian.
I worked with him. I made a TV series with him. And I have to say, I did ruin a few takes because he just ad libbed and just did, like, he would go on these, like, the camera would be pointed on him and he'd just like come up with all sorts of shit. And it was so funny that, and I was in the room and I couldn't stop laughing at some points. And I did ruin 2 takes. And then I had to leave the room because it was too hard to not laugh.
Yeah. What's that show that he had there? Yeah, it was Bastard. It was the MP was.
Yes, Minister.
That was the show. Yes, Minister, and then he played
Alain Bastard.
Alain Bastard. He played as an MP. That's very funny, and of course he was did that show where he played Flash.
Oh my god. That was a Blackadder.
Blackadder.
He was the funniest thing in Blackadder.
Very funny, very, very funny.
Oh my god. I can't even think about him right now because it'll make me laugh too much. Man, live stream with Max and Stacy's the best ever. Greatness. What was the TV program with Rickster? That was Tales of Uplift and Moral Improvement. It was on BBC 3 when they first started. And
I think the Young Ones. Wasn't he also
Yeah.
the Young Ones with not that bald guy?
He was in the Young Ones.
And that is, out Three Stooges is the Three Stooges.
Oh my God, he was so fun. We made Tales of Uplift and Moral Improvement with him after it was the first thing after his accident. Like he fell off his what do they call those all-terrain vehicles, and almost died. But he did die from it eventually. But he almost died then, and then was in a coma. And then his first thing he did was with us, because the director and he are old friends. And then the BBC was like, obviously he had, worked with them for a long time. So this was a way to ease him back into the BBC. It was a kind of a lower budget, like on BBC 3, which was brand new at that time. So it was more experimental and trying stuff. But
speaking of being eased back into the BBC, I see on BBC 2 now a series. They brought back that Scottish comedian who's inflammatory.
Frankie Boyle?
Frankie Boyle, right? So Frankie Boyle is back on BBC 2 with a series. And I saw some controversy last week. Somebody said something that all the blue hairs that live in the Shires sent in hundreds of letters to BBC headquarters complaining that they were offended. I mean, the blue hairs in the Shires of England are the original Karens.
Yeah, but it's everywhere now. Like in the US, it's in the elite sort of right-on, groovy, hipster, young left-wing people, as we see with Spotify now. Spotify, all these young people who work there have been complaining to the CEO that they're getting triggered by Joe Rogan, and they want to be able to edit and censor stuff he's saying. So I predict, as not only will the US Fed start sending checks to ordinary Brits soon, they'll do the Brits first, but then also that Joe Rogan will end his deal with Spotify by the end of the year. Because, like, what does he get out of it? Okay, he gets a guaranteed income, but this is going to be a nightmare for him, right? Like, he doesn't really need any more money. He's got a lot of money, so it's not like at the end of the day he's going to want to have these like crying Karens like complaining about every single thing he says.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, contrasting it to Howard Stern on Sirius XM. And, that's a subscription model. And I don't think he has any problems at all, any kind of censorship whatsoever. And he says and does stuff that he's doing think trigger a lot of people. So those, maybe that's where Joe Rogan will end up.
Well, all those same young people complaining and working at Spotify and complaining about Joe Rogan have been going through the archives of Howard Stern. And, to me, I think like, when I see those or listen to it, like I remember the 70s and 80s and 90s, and I just think, oh yeah, I remember back then. That's like what it was like. And it's amazing that you used to be able to get away with that in the office space, calling, any of the young women, hey babe, come over here, get me a cup of coffee. Like, that was just like part of the culture back then. And now you obviously wouldn't be able to get away with that. But
If you want to see something eye-opening, okay, go to YouTube and watch some of these old recordings of the Friars Club roasts with people like Milton Berle, Nipsey Russell, I think George Carlin maybe, and the level of casual racism
yeah.
on those shows is mind blowing. What people you would accept as fine for broadcast television, it's unbelievable. So, you can see where this came from, because there was an acceptance of racism that, or how about that show Mad Men? They depicted America in the 1960s and the casual anti-Semitism that was rife in American society, or the sexism. Look at the ads from the 1960s in mainstream magazines about jokes about how women are dumb and women can't cook and women are sex objects and men are the masters type of thing. All that stuff was our political correctness environment. It wasn't spawned from nothing. It came from genuine concern over how racism and sexism was undermining big portions of our society. Now, and of course, at this point, it's become a certain strain of vigilantism, maybe beyond what is the target. Maybe we flew over the target, and I'm not sure where we are now. To tell you the truth, it's gone a bit crazy.
But it also feels like it to me, having memories of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, like that we have come so far that the hysteria now about where we are now seems disproportionate, and you do see that they have to keep reaching back to like the 80s and stuff for examples, and you're like, no, it's like so different now. I mean,
Are you saying there's a revisionism going on? In other words, they've cleaned up today, and
yeah,
now they're going back and they're trying to clean up yesterday and 10 years ago and 20 years ago.
yeah, and like, I mean, that's, a lot of the content was created, especially out of New York back then, in the early days of, as you're talking about, 50s, 60s, 70s. And New York, just the nature of the city, of how it's an immigrant city, and each region, that's Chinatown, that's Koreatown, that's where the Bed-Stuy, where the Italians live. Like, so it was always divided by nationalities, right? So, like, that's how you saw people, like which part of Manhattan they were from. Now it's just like all honkyville, right? It's just like one big posh place. But back then it was like an immigrant city. Like, so that's how they framed the world they saw around them, is by the neighborhoods, which nationality or religion or which group you were from. And so I think, like, it's hard for somebody in Manhattan or Brooklyn today, except for maybe there's a few places in Brooklyn still very heavily Orthodox Jewish. But like, for the most part, it's just a big blend, right? Back then, it was definitely divided by neighborhoods based on your what color or what nationality you were, right? What background you had.
Right. Well, it's a concentration of many ethnic groups squeezed into Manhattan, which is seen as an opportunistic location and where you realize the American dream. And so these neighbors are packed in together, right? Little Italy and Chinatown are smushed together.
Yeah, yeah.
They're right next to each other. So you have, of course, you're going to have the the language and the words, and
Yes.
it's going to reflect the fact that you're pushed in and crushed in. It's not like
Yeah.
everyone's living on an estate, a 5-acre estate or a 10-acre estate in a mansion. They're living in tenements. They're
Yeah.
squeezed in.
Like within 3 blocks of each other. Like, it's just like,
Yeah, they're jamming
one block
all
difference.
day long to scratch a living. And so it's rough and tumble, and words are spoken that are not, elegant words. And but things go on. People are not going to, worry about it and worry about they've been offended because they got to hawk another 30 meat pies here in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, you got to sell some hot dogs, and but so that when I look back on that was the context. I still remember when New York was like that. So the content creators were living there, and that's what they saw around them. That's the fishbowl in which they were a fish riding. That's their reality. So, like, it's hard to escape your reality and think like differently. Like, I can't write and think like a Japanese person, we have Nozomi Hayezan. She sees things differently because she grew up in a different culture. So it's hard to escape your culture and pretend to be another culture or see from another gender or culture or reality. So I mean, so what I'm saying is like back then things were different and they have improved. We humans and society tend to improve. It gets better and better. We step back and fall back in time, and we have panics and moral panics and slide back, and we have backlash. Remember that we had the feminist movement in the 70s, for example, and then you had the backlash in the 80s. Remember that famous book, The Backlash? And then so we go forward, and then we take 4 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Right. So you're saying the television and advertising at the time was a reflection of what was the normal patois of that
Yes.
era, that there was a level of ethnic
It wasn't
epithets that
yeah.
were bandied about
It
casually.
It wasn't like division. It was like an identifier. Oh, you come from Bed-Stuy. Oh, you're an Irish person. Like so, as Irish Americans, my dad's family, they're all cops in New York, right? Like that's what they do. It's stereotypical, but that's what they do.
Also, everybody's on the verge of getting into a fight, right?
Yeah.
So you limb the distinctive neighborhoods and the cultures with language.
Mm-hmm.
And the language, it starts off casually, like, the Italians and the Chinese are living together, and they might have some way to refer to each other that is not antagonistic, but it makes a distinction. And then because you're jammed together and you're competing for the same US dollar, that can get into a conflagration. And so those words are turned up. The volume on those words is increased to become epithet, to become nasty. And then, okay, are you going to go fight? Are you going to fight? And then, of course, many fights all the time, particularly New York in the 70s. There's 3,000 murders a year. This is the nature of an urban environment. We've become, I guess, what I'm getting from this is that there's a certain level now of sanitization in the culture, and it's become not antiseptic, but
antithetical to human normal behavior. The fact is,
it's too sanitized.
As Adam Smith would say, you have to embrace all of nature. As Satoshi recognized, you have to embrace all of nature, the good and bad of humans. And so to try to, we all are tribal. Look at Bitcoin versus ETH heads and stuff like that. As you identify with a tribe. Bitcoin is a global tribe. It's a nationality almost of like, if you're a Bitcoiner, you're part of our gang, right? Everybody in Orange Pill, like technically they're from another tribe. They're, somebody's from China, somebody's from Bogota, somebody's from Argentina, somebody's from Mexico, somebody's from Los Angeles. And that's one way of identifying, but they're all Bitcoiners. And, everybody places various things on, like, do I see myself as a Bitcoiner first or a woman first? Or an American, or a Finnish American, or Irish American? Like, which one do I see myself first? It depends on what gang of people I'm hanging out with at the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's where you are. Corey Clipson was asking in the group, anybody's Finnish? And like, I call myself Finnish. Like, that's what I identify more as Finnish than American, though I've never been to Finland. You've been to Finland, but my whole family spoke Finnish at home, and they were Finnish, and we talked about Finland, and we talked about Sisu, and talked about all this stuff. So like, I feel like I am Finnish, like inside, because I absorbed their ethos and culture.
Right, and the Finns hate the Swedes.
Yes, that's
right?
a weird
thing.
The
Swedes hate the Finns. And
no, it's the other way around.
And they call each other, like rotted fish, or whatever the slur is. What does a Finn call a Swede? You rotten fish, you?
Well, because Sweden ruled Finland for about 500 years. So,
yeah.
And the national language of Finland was made Swedish, or you had to speak Swedish. So I know.
The stinking Swedes.
My great grandmother.
I hate them.
She refused to speak Swedish. So
that's right, because they stink. Because we're Finnish and they're Swedish.
I mean, that's the thing about tribes, right? I mean, it's so ridiculous. I had a situation where I met Ulrika Johnson, who's a famous Swede living in London. And somebody introduced us and said, oh, Ulrika, here's Stacy's. You know, Stacy's Finnish. Maybe you guys speak. You could speak together. And she's like, oh no, Finns speak Swedish. We don't speak Finnish. She said that to me right in front of all these like BBC people. And I was like,
what a nasty
like,
C word she is.
Fuck. I was like, my family doesn't speak Swedish. And she was like, yes, they do. And I was like, you fucking bitch. And all these like people from the BBC are like, what the fuck? You both have blonde hair. You're just like from Scandinavia. And I was like furious. I was like, what the hell do I care, right? Like, I'm not my great grandmother. Like, she had a different life experience and fled during the Civil War in Finland, you know, which spilled over because of the Russian Civil War.
Nothing like a good cat fight. That's it. You know, that time my Rockefeller, my rock Radio City Music Hall, story about the Rockettes.
Oh yes, tell the people about the Rockettes.
Yeah, so one of my many jobs in New York City before becoming a stockbroker was I was an usher at Radio City Music Hall, or guest relations, as they called it. And so you do a number of different jobs. You do the usher job, but you man the elevators. You do the elevators between mezzanines and the basement, the audience elevators. Then there are these stage elevators, right? So Radio City Music Hall, you've got 2 or 3 sub stages, and of course that big rising stage. And so there's 50th Street and 51st Street. And 50th Street were chorus boys, dressing rooms, and 51st Street were Rockettes. And the first thing you learn when you're back there working the stage elevators is never let these two mix. Never let Rockettes in with the chorus boys. So I'm like, okay, I'll make sure to do that. I don't know why, but fine. So one day, sure enough, we've got an elevator full of chorus boys, and click, 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 click. In walks 2 Rockettes. Doors closed. Okay, I'm in this elevator with 2 Rockettes and some chorus boys. Within 5 seconds, the Rockettes were like, you know, screaming at these guys, calling them all kinds of names, making this worst like slurs you could possibly imagine. The sequins were flying. And I
you
thought
look like one of those chorus boys.
It was like a major brawl was going to break out. You know, these two hate each other. They're like, yeah. So then finally the doors open and the chorus boys run out. You know, the Rockettes are like, yeah, I kicked that motherfucker with that, man. Yeah, Shirley, I never want to see anybody in our elevator again. So it's like, wow, that's amazing. So there you have, just on the same stage, yes, 2 tribes that are warring with each other for decades. Just because, you know, some animosities that go back, who knows?
But that's what I'm saying is like the way humans are throughout history, you could see at least 7,000 years of history, right? Whether it's in the hieroglyphics or whatever, you could see that what happens, like you could kill the elite now, destroy them as they did in France, and there will be a new elite. And those elite always like make sure their children stay in the elite, because you don't want your children to go down a class, right? You don't want them to become disadvantaged. So you make sure, use your power to secure your family's rights and your friends' rights. And then like it happens over and over. So it doesn't matter if women took over the world. And, you know, there was always this notion that, you know, if we replaced all the board members and the CEOs with women, like, of course, women would then become corrupt because power corrupts, right? You then use all your power to make sure your family and friends and girlfriends are doing well and make sure to exclude everybody else.
Everyone's hair would look great, though.
Exactly. Not in lockdown. What do you think of my hair? Do you think I did a good job with this? Like, I've been doing the cut. Like, this is how I do my haircut. Like,
yeah,
I just
the GoFundMe page really worked out for your hair.
I go like this.
You raised over $47,000.
I got some professional scissors and I just like chop it at the ends. Just try not to do too much. Like if I know that if I cut more than like a fraction of an inch, it could be horribly wrong, but it's just slowly going horribly wrong.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, I use one of those buzz cuts.
Yeah. Well, you're able to do that, right?
Right. I literally don't even look. So I just put my hands on my head with the buzzer and I set it to 10 to 12, whatever that means, whatever the gauge is. I have no idea, but it's the right gauge. Then I just run it over my head. I never even look at it. I have my vacuum cleaner right here sucking up all the hair as I'm doing this, right? And within 15 seconds, I'm completely done with this. And it's all hairs cleaned up, gone. Jump in the shower, get whatever remaining hairs left stuck to my body, and I'm done.
Well, you're lucky, and you don't have to highlight your hair. Anita Posh, she's in the group. Say hi to Anita, and she has an amazing podcast. Actually, I'm going to steal some of her questions and her content. I'm embarrassed that she's there because we're interviewing Ala Kanani, and she did the best interview of Ala Kanani. It's so touching, and just like Bitcoin Lady, she's known as on Twitter, and Ala Kanani is literally the best person in Bitcoin. I really believe like the best, like the heart and soul of Bitcoin. Like
she's the godmama.
She's the godmama of it. And in fact, they're saying that Botswana area is like where all modern humans come from.
And the honey badger.
And the honey badger. So that's the source of all life, of human life. And therefore, they're the source of Satoshi event. Out of the blackness comes Bitcoin.
Ala Kanani is godmama of Bitcoin. She is the light and the source of Satoshi.
But in fact, maybe Anita could provide a link in the comments to that interview because it is so good. I think, see, everybody loves my haircut.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
It's
really nice. Really, really nice. I admire it.
Well, Max even liked it when it was like orangish yellow. It depended on how the light hit it. Like when I first did
I think you should go Sinead O'Connor. Just go bald, because you got the cheekbones for it. You don't need hair.
I don't.
Hair is for people with bad cheekbones. You've got nice cheekbones. You got those finished cheekbones. You don't need hair. I
can't because it's just the shape of my head doesn't look good with short hair. So
That's what I'm saying. It looks great. No, I'm a man. I'm telling you, the shape of your head without any hair is very nice.
I already did it, Max. I was like a punk rock. I was new wave in the 80s and did like hair shave. Like I had messed up hair. Okay. Like I thought it was cool to have part of my head shaved.
Well, this is what I think called a feathered cut, right? Feathered? Is that still used?
I don't know. I forget the names.
Hairstyling?
So my hairdresser that I have down here is like, he spends 2 weeks of the month in New York City and 2 weeks here, and he takes the bus back and forth. So that's why also like I haven't really wanted to go see him because I'm like, well, the COVID thing has like a 14-day incubation period and you're going up to New York City and then taking the bus down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I want you standing over me for 3 hours.
No.
So once I came to that realization and I finally accepted that this lockdown is probably going to go on for another 6 to 9 months, I was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to put highlights on my hair.
Those, when you go to the pedicurist and manicurist, they have those little fish that will give you a pedicure.
Yeah.
They eat the dead skin off your toes.
I don't know if they're allowed to do it anymore.
Are they fish or little crabs or something?
They're fish.
Little fish?
Crabs.
Yeah, yeah. No, you don't want crabs. You don't want crabs. But why not have some animal that will cut your hair? Like, there got to be some fish or squirrels or something that will just, they like to create a good hairdo. That'd be kind of nice, right? Just put like a bowl on your head full of squirrels, and a half hour later, it's got a perfect hairdo.
Oh, that was big back in the 50s. I think they put a bowl in your head and cut your hair. I see,
like the Three Stooges.
I saw a lot of photos of my mom and her sister.
Yeah,
they all look like that. Somebody says that space is fake.
It's definitely fake. Don't believe in space whatsoever. There's no such thing as space. It's just one big spaghetti.
Speaking of space,
spaghetti monster, flying spaghetti monster is it? That's it.
Speaking of space, I want to wrap up here, and we'll tell you about our schedule over the next few weeks and this weekend with a Magical Crypto Conference. And what I want to say is that Nikola, you see that company that was created by this guy who's kind of mimicking Elon Musk.
It's like the Love Boat with my leg and my love shirt.
Max, most of these people don't know what Love Boat is.
Anyone remember that show, The Love Boat?
They're not as old as us. So the thing is, what I was saying is this company Nikola.
Yeah.
You see that they're like the CEO is like run off and
Yeah, it's vaporware.
Yeah, it's vaporware. But they were doing the whole New York thing. Speaking of New York, a fake it till you make it. And Elon Musk was great at doing this, and he's become a almost 100 billionaire from fake it till you make it. Right?
Yeah.
Like Elon Musk did this. Right? This is what he did. Is like, yeah, send us $1,000 and we'll build you a car in 5 years.
Yeah.
And he escaped any sort of being arrested or anything for that.
He achieved escape velocity with his scam.
Yes. So the thing is, like, this guy from Nikola tried the same thing.
Yeah.
But couldn't come up with it. I think it's like falling apart. The whole scam is falling apart.
It's very difficult to repeat a scam like that and get away with it after somebody's already kind of done it. That's why on Wall Street, you need to create ever new scams, right? You can't do the same scam over and over again. The FinCEN revelations, it's a whole suite of scams that took the place of all the scams from 2008. Now that these scams have been revealed, they'll all be dismantled, and within 6 months, they'll have another 20 to 40 new scams, and then we'll read about that in 10 years, and they'll call it the new FinCEN scam / Bernie Madoff / subprime collateralized mortgage obligation Goldman Sachs bullshit crap scam.
So somebody's asking, does fake space smell like steak?
No. Fake space smells and looks exactly like a fake latte.
Okay. And Max wears a comb in his back pocket. That, of course,
I wear a pick.
Yeah, that was very 70s, right?
Very 70s. It's a pick with a black salute sign. That's what I always have in my back pocket, baby, because Black Power.
And finally, I want to say we're going to be at the Magical Crypto Conference speaking as avatars. And one thing, Max is on Friday at 1:50 p.m. Eastern Time.
It's the Love Boat. Now we give the schedule. And the shuffleboard at 2:30 on the second deck.
That's right. I used to love shuffleboard.
Yeah,
But Max will be on. He's going to be doing a fireside chat about hyper Bitcoinization, and Lena Seish. I wish I could pronounce you should ask Anita Posch how to pronounce Seish. It's a German name. Even though, like, when we went to remember when we went to
Hamburg?
Not Hamburg, but where else did we go? Anyway, we went to one of not Frankfurt either. We went to Munich, and we interviewed that guy. He was like a green energy guy, and he was like, "Why is your name Max Keiser and you don't speak German?"
Yeah. Yeah, I can speak fake German.
Yeah. It sounds real to me. And even our taxi driver, I remember.
I did that in the taxi, and the guy was looking at me, nodding his head like, "You're damn right, brother." I'm like,
"What did you say?"
What did I just say?
So Max is on Friday at 1:50 p.m. Then I'm on Saturday at 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time. First with, I'm moderating a panel on investing in Bitcoin companies with Elise Killeen, who is like the queen of VC investing in the Bitcoin space. She's on the board of Blockstream as well. Meltem Demirors, everybody knows her. She's like kicked ass in front of Congress, right? That was one of the best ever moments in Bitcoin, I thought. Like, it
was a seminal moment. She
schooled
huge.
Congress.
She did. She bitch slapped Congress.
She bitch slapped them. And
Very
then
nice.
we have Nick Carter on that as well.
Smiling while she was doing it.
She did smile while she did.
Smiling bitch slapper, Meltem Demirors.
I like Meltem so much because one thing that most people probably don't know is she's also Turkish and grew up in Amsterdam and then moved here. So she's like multilingual, but also multicultural. So the more like I was saying, like, I can't think like a Japanese person like Nozomi can, but like to be able to imagine to be able to think like in different languages and different cultures is an amazing thing. I think it's an amazing power, and she has that superpower. So that's why I like talking to her. And then right after that, I'm going to be doing a fireside. I'm going to chat to Adam Back. I'm going to do the interviewing. He's going to be the guest.
Good. Yeah, find out what's going on with Adam Back.
I'd like him to do the other way, like to interview me.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Anyway, so, and finally, people have asked, like, we were supposed to interview Adam back last week, but then he had to travel, and then he said he could do it this week. But then I was like, well, I'm going to be doing Magical Crypto Conference with you, so people are going to be like, they don't want 2 days of Max and Stacy and Adam back. So we're having Alec Kanani this week.
Oh, good.
Then next week it's Adam Curry. And then the following week is Adam back. And then Robert Breedlove. And then Michael Krieger. So those are some of the guests coming up. And I know Microdose has turned out to be like a big dose of Orangeville. Like my intention when I started all of this thing was to do like 15, 20 minutes. But we just can't stop talking.
One pill makes you taller, and one pill makes you Stacy, and one pill turns you into a Bitcoiner, and the orange pill turns you mad. And ask Alice while she's 10 feet tall.
I need to end this.